If you have a vertically integrated distribution and product model, you have an unfair advantage, and you don't need to care about distribution strategy.
This is the Roadmap to 10 Billion podcast. I'm Wayne, this is Gareth, and we're going to dive a little bit more into the vertically integrated model.
Easy for you to say, Wayne.
Yes, isn't it just? So you think that that's going to skim over that. So what you're saying is you don't care about growth in a vertically integrated model, and my job is to challenge that.
Okay, go.
Okay, cool. So it's true, you've got an unfair advantage, right? Because your sales are already in the building in theory, and so the money's just going to flow into the funds. But my challenge is that whilst you may not be needing to create the awareness and the interest or even the desire, you've still got a problem.
Okay.
Because getting those assets into your vertically integrated funds in your central investment proposition or your distributor influenced funds,
You get it all today, don't you?
fully complicated word in here, right? Is a different kind of issue, because those funds are flowing in directly from advisors or wealth managers or an investment proposition that's within the same group.
All in the same network.
Exactly. So what do you think the problems might be here versus someone that's doing it externally?
I mean, I think your advisor network has got a more limited range of options. So then the question is almost like a problem for them, surely, rather than the fund manufacturer. It's like, do I have the fund that I can put in this particular scenario or give it this allocation in this portfolio?
Yeah, exactly. And what you've got to do is manage the conflict. There is a conflict of interest there, and it's an enormous one that people are being put into particular funds. But that's achievable. There's ways to do that.
Okay.
And a lot of the documentation, the paperwork, the things that we speak about external funds having to do when they're selling into those professional buyers still exist. So you've still got to be very clear about what it is that the funds are doing. You've got to be very clear about who they're for. You've got to have lots of documentation that says what the process is, when the fund will perform, when it won't. You've got to have all the quant stuff. All of that still has to exist, because arguably the rationale, the justification for investing in those funds has to be more robust than it does for an external fund that somebody's buying.
Okay, so you're saying distribution strategy does matter, even if you're vertically integrated. And in fact, the way you would think about that is in the context of conflicts and in the context of being clear to advisors why a particular fund is appropriate, and the conflict doesn't outweigh the benefit of selling the fund in that context.
Yeah, exactly. So the cost and charges, for example, is a big thing regardless of what fund you're buying. But if it's an internal fund, then you've got to be really super clear about who's paying what costs and charges and how that interacts across the full internal vertically integrated distribution chain, so that it doesn't look and so that you can evidence that this isn't a case of routing investors into a particular product because you make more money. It's a case of routing it in because it's very suitable for those particular ranges, because as a group you understand that client base far better than someone who isn't that close to the end retail advisor, because you have a much better grasp and control of the full distribution chain, and that distribution chain with the product in it is super appropriate for the end investors who, as we say, are within your group and being advised by people that you're talking to.
Let's pause there a moment. What is the roadmap to 10 billion? It's our detailed step-by-step plan on how a fund manager can get their funds from zero AUM all the way to 10 billion.
It builds on years of experience and conversations with professional fund buyers in the UK and combines compliance, portfolio management, sales, marketing, distribution and oversight. To access the roadmap, visit the website 0.1.
All right, unpause, back to the pod. And so you've got this distribution chain. You're saying distribution strategy matters. Which bits of that distribution strategy are the things that a vertically integrated model provider will need to focus on more than, say, a non-vertically integrated model?
So you're probably coming in a little bit later through the roadmap. So as we've said, you're not necessarily looking to create awareness. So you're not going to the portfolio manager saying, look at this fund, because we all know they will already know full well about the fund, and will probably be allocating to it already. What you're doing is making sure that, firstly, your products that you're selling are appropriate, that they're well defined, that they're well specified, that they're well documented, and that they're very well governed. But then you start to focus more on the independence of the different functions within the chain, and what it is that they're doing to make sure that that all remains suitable. So, for example, who's overseeing what the funds do and making sure that it remains appropriate, and that they're doing that independently. Sure. What you don't want to drift into, which happens loads, is the investment team overseeing themselves.
Yep.
It needs to be an independent function overseeing what it is that the investment team are doing, so that you've got that distinction. And that's one of the ways that you manage the obvious conflicts of interest that arise.
But equally, what you don't want to do is mire yourself in committees on committees on committees, right? So that eventually you're slowing yourself down too much.
Yeah, you got to be focused about what it is that the different committees and the different groups are doing. Don't duplicate. That's the bit that causes the friction. Have the committees, have the independence, but don't do it twice. Just do it once, but do it well and in the right independent area.
Okay. And then, so what about product materials, documentation, fact sheets, or maybe the things that aren't in fact sheets but are more descriptive of what the products actually do? How important are they in that kind of distributed or vertically integrated model?
I'd say they're equally important.
Okay.
Because if you're an advisor talking to an end client, then you still want the same level of support. You still want to be able to tell the client what it is they're invested in. And you yourself still want to know that you're making the best decision. Now, that decision may be driven by the group you're part of as much as it is by your investment research. But nonetheless, it's still critical that you can say, I've picked the best product within the regulatory permissions that my firm has and that my group are operating under. I've picked the best product for the client that I'm talking to and given the objectives that they're trying to achieve. So it may be that you want to be a little less salesy and a little more specific about that sort of thing. But nonetheless, I'd say it was equally important, if not arguably more important.
And how does that affect product manufacture itself? So thinking about the products you create, the structure that you put them into, the regulatory frameworks in which they operate, the risk profiles that they have. How does that sit in that vertically integrated model versus a non-vertically integrated model?
Expectation on the products and the governance and the design and the co-manufacture is another critical one, is no less important than it is. In fact, it's equally important. But your benefit, of course, is that your buyers are in the room with you.
Yeah.
So you should know better what it is that the fund selectors want to see. You should be closer to the end retail client in many cases. So you should be better placed to build something that fits well what it is that you're selling and who you're distributing it to.
The unfair advantage.
Exactly. It's an unfair advantage, but it's one that exists, but just has to be managed really carefully. And I guess the point of all this is to say that having that unfair advantage can make it feel like you've got less to do on that being specific, that oversight, that government, that getting the money in. You haven't. You've got the same amount to do. It's just that you come at it a bit later. You're not trying to get a foot in the door. You're not trying to get a meeting. You've already got the meetings. You've already got feet in the door. Now you just need to make sure you manage that super carefully.
And how much does the fund manufacturer, or how much could the fund manufacturer help the downstream distributors like the advisors in the network, like maybe the platform that's within the group, to select the right fund for the right client in the moment?
They can do loads, and they can do more, arguably, than an external can. And you would expect that, right? So if I'm an advisor advising a client and I want a multi-asset strategy, and I pick a bunch of BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity products to do that for me, I'm unlikely to get much bespoke help from any of those groups, and I'm unlikely to be able to sit with the portfolio managers that are involved there. Right now, passives don't have portfolio managers per se, but the asset allocators will still be doing something that says this is where I'm allocating my passive allocation, geographically, risk profile, whatever that might be. vertically integrated model, you can have that. You should be getting direct access to the portfolio managers. The portfolio managers should understand the advisors better. They should be doing conferences, webinars, providing literature.
Yeah.
That stuff has to be as good, if not better. It should be better because it can be more targeted.
Yeah.
It's got to be carefully controlled. So you've got to make sure you're saying the right things. You're being very clear. You're not falling foul of these conflicts. But yeah, it's a big selling point.
And beyond a certain size, it's right, isn't it, that a fund manager, product manufacturer might have multiple funds of the same strategy within the same-ish risk profile, multiple risk 3 multi-asset funds, for instance. So again, how do you help your advisors, help the distributors differentiate between those products?
I think that's happens a lot where the vertically integrated groups are consolidators. So they're buying multiple advisory firms or wealth manager firms into one group. They're used to buying certain products from certain people, and so you end up with these layers, or they bring products with them because they already had their own multi-asset solution, for example, so they get put together. Now, in those instances, I think the key bit is for the group, where it can do this properly, to be very clear about revisiting its strategy. So why have I got all these products? Now, at the outset, it might be clear, but 6 months, 12 months down the line, you might have had some consolidation of investment proposition, of operation, of distribution, of platform. And so at that point, you need to revisit again and say, do I still need all these products? Are they still all the best fit for those people? Do I need more products? Perhaps, it doesn't always have to be about consolidating, but what's the best approach to take? You just have to revisit that and be sure that you're always mindful and documenting what conflicts of interest might exist, and that the investor is the one that's benefiting most from that consolidation, not necessarily the owners and the profit line.
Okay, so basically what we're saying is, yes, vertically integrated models have an unfair advantage. Yes, they do still have to think about distribution and the strategy of that distribution. The problems are slightly different because you're looking at conflicts, you're looking at using your unfair advantage with the distributors to either manufacture products or to sell the story of the product in a different way, or in a slightly more engaged, more direct way. But that at the same time, there's still challenges within that that you need to overcome through good governance, through good strategic oversight, in order to enable that model to kind of work effectively and seamlessly.
Yeah, exactly. So it is an advantage. The portfolio managers can be in the room with the advisors, which benefits both parties. You have more certainty of asset flows, which often can lead to better performance, because if you've got a constant stream of AUM coming in, that's usually a lot better for a fund's performance than having money going out all the time. And the messaging is more targeted, because you know who you're delivering it to. And then there's one other point, I guess, which is around the difference between like an MPS or a DFM model and a unitized fund model. But again, you know who you're talking to, and you know what the benefits are, and you can articulate those tax benefits for unitization when you rebalance versus an MPS where it's fragmented and can realize capital gains and so on and so forth. There's lots there. So I guess the message is, yes, you've got an advantage. No, you're not trying to get a foot in the door, but you've still got a lot to think about. And this roadmap is as relevant to vertically integrated firms as it is to the standalone asset managers.
Great. Thank you, Wayne. That's been really insightful. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you the next time for the roadmap to 10 billion.
Thank you.